Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, Beauty Within Sickle Cell. I'm Jasmine, and in today's video, I would like to discuss a little bit about the bone marrow transplant. I would like to discuss kind of how I came to decide that a bone marrow transplant was an option for me, and kind of discuss the thought process behind me really jumping into this bone marrow transplant process. And in a future video, I will go into more detail and the scientific reasonings as to what is a bone marrow transplant and how does it work, and all the medical terms will be in that video. But for right now, I just want to focus on kind of maybe the emotional side, or the reason as to why I did it and why I'm going to be doing it. As you can see, I now have a Hickman line inserted, so that is something that you will need to get when you are getting a bone marrow transplant. So let's jump right in, and I'm going to start off this video by saying that this is my journey, and I'm going to try to share as much as I can for educational purposes and for my channel, and I always want to include you guys as much as I can and share with you guys my journey. Now, nobody's journey is the same, and so what may or may not work for me may not work for the next sickle cell patient. So please bear that in mind when listening to people's stories or watching online videos. Everyone's journey is quite differently, and so it's all about me sharing my perspective as a sickle cell patient and a bone marrow transplant recipient. Now, with that being said, I decided to go ahead and create a new series with regards to the transplant process. It's going to be called Transplant Tuesdays. So every Tuesday I should have a video that is coming out regarding the transplant process. What is a bone marrow transplant? And for example, in this video, I'll be discussing, kind of the reasoning as to why I decided to go ahead and opt for a bone marrow transplant. And so each Tuesday I should have a video, unless I get very sick. I did get very sick because of the chemotherapy this past Friday and weekend, and so I was very nauseous and ill, so I wasn't able to do a lot of the work that I needed to for my internship, but they were very understanding. And so again, I will be creating this series called Transplant Tuesdays, and every Tuesday I should have a video with regards to the bone marrow transplant process. And enough with that, let's jump right in as to why I decided to get a bone marrow transplant and my reasoning behind that. So last year for me was a pretty difficult year, as I've discussed in a previous video. I've mentioned that I was getting very ill quite frequently, and as the year went on, my hemoglobin was just dipping lower and lower, and I was finding myself in more and more pain. So with me, last year was a very difficult year, and so last year I would say that I was in pain almost on a daily basis. I was in a lot of pain, and the pain was not residing at all. I was having more frequent pain crisis. I was being hospitalized a lot more frequently, and for me, I felt like my symptoms were getting worse and worse. So I was offered by my hematologist to participate in a bone marrow transplant study, and I can go into much more detail as to what this study is about. They are going to be studying the effects of chemotherapy in sickle cell patients and the transplant recipients. And so my hematologist, she brought it up to me around the time that I was going to graduate. So it might have been anywhere from March to May. And since I was in school, I didn't take her up on the offer, and I just was like, it's too much for me to go and see the doctor, the transplant doctor, because I have to travel to LA because they don't have a transplant, I guess, facility down here at Kaiser, and So Kaiser doesn't do bone marrow transplants, so they have to ship them over to City of Hope, which is a hospital that they're working with and who will be conducting the study on the bone marrow transplant. We kind of went on living our life like one does, and we did think about it. My mom and I chat, do you think this is something we should do? And we kept chatting, we kept discussing the issues, and eventually the doctor called us back because again I was in pain, and I went and saw, I had my 3-month follow-up with her in, I believe, August, and she told me again, I think this is something that you guys should look into because you are getting more frequently sick, and right now you don't have pretty much any other options, and you have a whole life ahead of you that if this bone marrow does work, you can live a pretty healthy life from then on. So by then I wasn't in school anymore, so I decided to, what is there to lose? Yeah, let's do the appointment, let's call up the doctors, and yeah, I'm interested now in the bone marrow transplant process. We didn't have our appointment until October 6th, so our first appointment was, I believe, October 6th, and that was with Kaiser. They're in Kaiser Permanente Sunset in Los Angeles, something like that. I forget the name. I can put it on the screen. They actually referred me to a pediatric hematologist, and I guess he's the one that's in charge of the transplants for people in my age range. I am not a pediatric patient anymore. I am 25. I just turned 25, so I am no longer a pediatric. So this study will be conducted by pediatric doctors though, so I will be taking care in the pediatric areas of the hospital. He basically introduced us the process. We discussed, who are your family members? Do you have siblings? Your brother could be a match. Your parents could be a half match. We discussed those options. We discussed the possibility of possibly freezing my eggs because the risk chemotherapy has, it can lead to infertilization for females in the future, and you may not be able to have babies in the future. So he kind of described all of the issues that should be taken care of before the transplant, and it was so much information. We had so many papers thrown in our way. We had to sign caregiver agreements stating, that your caregiver will be there for you and things like that. And so then in October 31st, right on Halloween, we had another appointment to go and meet the doctors at City of Hope who will be doing the actual bone marrow transplantation and taking the cells from my donor to myself. So I met the wonderful doctors, the nurses, the social workers, everybody who's going to be in my team because it is a team effort now. And so of course we decided, yes, we're gonna do this just because I'm not in school right now. I wasn't really working, and at this point of life, I was looking to get a job because after graduation you go and get a job, but my health was really deteriorating. So I thought, you know what, let's go ahead and try to see if this bone marrow transplant would work. And that is kind of the headspace that I was in. The reason I wanted to do it now is because if I wait till I'm older, I'm probably, as the more years that I wait, I'm not going to be as healthy as I am possibly in this moment. With sickle cell, your blood cells are going to be breaking down more and more, and your organs can end up failing. And so I feel like at this moment in time, yes, the pain is just beyond insane, and all these other complications that I'm having, but I don't feel like I'll be healthier this healthy in the future, if that makes sense, because I can have a stroke and have secondary complications as life goes on. I can have more acute chest syndromes and have more red blood cells just breaking down in my spleen, and my spleen and liver end up failing and having, you know, your organs ultimately fail. So I felt like, since I am pretty young still and pretty decently healthy, let's put it like, I'm gonna go ahead and do this bone marrow transplant. So that is kind of the headspace that I was in. For me, I am dealing with pain on a daily basis, and I don't really know why doctors don't believe us that we are in pain on a daily basis. But for me, I started having pains on a daily basis, and life is getting pretty you know, difficult and rough for me to manage my sickle cell. I'm gonna continue fighting this disease, and I understand that the bone marrow transplant can offer a potential cure, and just like it can offer a potential cure, it may not offer a potential cure. It, you know, it might be the same, and I totally understand both sides of the story. I am very knowledgeable as to, you know, it could be a 50-50, but it's a risk that I'm willing to take, and it's a risk that I want to take and I want to invest in, and I want to see the outcomes and see what will happen. Well, will I benefit or not? So that is kind of my thinking. So yeah, you know, basically, to keep it short, the reason I decided to do a bone marrow transplant is because the decline of my health, and at the same time because I feel like this is the right time for me to do it. I am no longer in school, and I really don't have that commitment of needing to graduate and feeling like, oh, I gotta pass this class, and you know, now I have my degree and I'm done with that chapter. That chapter is done, and now I can feel comfortable to take this next year or couple of years for healing and see where life takes me, and whether I get cured. That'll be such an amazing thing. I wouldn't even know how to live without sickle cell and live without pain on a daily basis, which that'll be a blessing in itself. But if I do remain with sickle cell, at least I'm more knowledgeable about this process and can continue educating others about what the bone marrow transplant was like, my experience, my journey, and continue raising awareness. There is always a need for bone marrow donations. There are so many people with sickle cell disease, cancer, and other illnesses, so we need more donors. We need organ donations. We need to raise awareness as to how we can each get our communities respectively to increase donation for various types of either bone marrow or other organs, like maybe even kidneys and other stuff like that. For me, it's always about providing some sort of education at the end of the day to my viewers and to my subscribers who I care about very much. Each and every single one of you, I thank you for following my journey and for, you know, commenting and sending your prayers my way and to being actively involved in my life. It really brightens my day, and when I'm down, I just go and I see your beautiful messages, and it really inspires me to make better and greater content. And so that, you know, the least I can do is share my journey with you guys. There are so many misconceptions, and there are so many comments out there that I've seen that have a lot of misguidance, miseducation with regards to bone marrow transplant. People think you automatically get cured from bone marrow transplant, and that may not be the truth. You may, some people can get cured, yes, and some people remain with sickle cell. The transplant did not take, and they will remain with sickle cell disease. So there's a lot of misconceptions and miseducation out there with regards to bone marrow transplants. So please, if you are interested in getting a bone marrow transplant, reach out to myself, or please reach out to other people who have had these transplants in the sickle cell community so you can get their perspectives. I hope that whatever the case may be, at least I'm bringing some sort of education to my channel, and I'll let the rest be in God's hands. Let it be in God's hands, and we'll see what road that'll take us down. So yeah guys, that is the reason why I decided to do the bone marrow transplant. My health was just not the best, and I felt like it was the perfect timing for me, mentally, emotionally, financially, and all of these things. I felt like the stars were really aligning for me, sort of say. That is the reason why. I just wanted this video to be kind of simple, straight to the point as to my decision and why I chose it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and please leave me some questions down below if you guys have any questions regarding the transplant process, so I can dedicate an entire video to your questions and really get this Transplant Tuesdays out to you guys, so you guys can learn more about bone marrow transplants and really get a deeper understanding as to what it is, how it's done, the process, the procedures, the testings before, the testings after, everything in between, the chemotherapy, the steroids, possibly whatever medications. We'll discuss everything here on Transplant Tuesdays. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, please remember to check out my Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, and my blog. I'll leave everything linked down below in the description box, and as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.